Hello everyone. Today for this Book Review Wednesday I've decided to review a book that I am already familiar with because I read it, and it is called Water for Elephants. And in case you haven't heard of this book in particular, it was made into a movie, a recent movie I think, probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it sort of involves the circus life within the early stages of the Great Depression, within like the 1930s. So you sort of see these different characters that come out of this sort of era, and they sort of provide an interesting perspective on the way the circus life is handled, and you'll kind of see how the author tries to take you into that world. And I believe the author is Sarah Gruen. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. But basically, our main protagonist, his name is Jacob Janowski, and basically he is a young man in college or university, Ivy League, and he wants to become a veterinarian. And then something unfortunate happens, and these circumstances lead him to leave the university and eventually get caught up in the circus world. And if you choose to read the novel, you'll kind of understand how all these events end up happening. But basically, he ends up being a veterinarian for the animals in the circus, and he comes across a lot of interesting characters. Walter, who is a dwarf, Camel, who is a sort of a drunk, and August, who is sort of the leader of the circus and who makes all of the decisions on how things are basically run. He is a rather interesting character in that he has sort of this split personality. At points he tries to appear charming and sophisticated, and other times he's rather brutal and cruel. You'll see how he sort of mistreats the animals, and how he kind of tries to over-control things, because he doesn't really know how to manage a circus, even though he is technically the boss. He kind of sees things in a very micromanaged way, in that he feels that he has to take whatever frustration he feels out on everybody within the circus. So you'll kind of see how he has these kind of splits within his personality, and how at certain points he appears charming, but really deep down he's not all that he seems to be. So it is a rather interesting antagonist sort of to this story, and you'll kind of see how Jacob has to get around this, and how the events lead up to sort of the climax between August and the circus itself, and you'll sort of see how that ends up playing out. But for the most part, that's August's character. And you'll also see how he comes across, I believe it's pronounced Marlena, and Marlena is August's wife, and you'll kind of see how he sort of is not the best husband either. And you'll kind of see how she and Jacob develop this really strong bond, and how it eventually leads to being romantic, and August ends up obviously not liking this. So you'll kind of see how these sort of situations end up playing out, and how they sort of affect the circus, and how things can change all just by whatever circumstances you run into, especially in the beginning when Jacob is trying to just leave the university. He doesn't really know where he's going, and then he suddenly stumbles upon this circus, and it's sort of like luck, because at the end of the day he manages to overcome all of these things throughout the story, and you'll sort of see how it goes a little bit in and out of time, because it's supposed to technically take place when he's at the nursing home, and he's already like 93 years old and doesn't really have anybody left in his family, so except I think maybe some children, but at the same time he's rather old and feels like, you know, his life has passed him by, and you sort of see how the story starts off that way, but then he flashbacks into when he was younger, and you'll kind of see how he is as a character, and how it sort of plays a role in how he ultimately decides in the way beginning to sort of try something completely new from where he was. And the fact that he's able to just stumble upon a circus and then have all these like little adventures, I think it makes the novel rather engaging and interesting to read. It has some points where you could argue that they may be a little cliche, especially having like a love triangle, where we've seen this in tons and tons and tons of novels already. But I think it is executed well in that the two characters, Jacob and Marlena, seem to be rather decent people and seem to really get to know each other and establish a connection. And you'll kind of see how August, even though he is supposed to be played out in this story as sort of the villain, he does have this kind of depth to him that I think works for a book like this. So really it is kind of like one of those, it tries to be, I think, a little whimsical at times. It tries to be rather dark at other points as well, but I think overall it's a decent book. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it, and it's really all told through Jacob's point of view, so I find that to be rather interesting, because a lot of the novels that I usually read have a female person speaking, or it's just it's just written in the third person, but this one's actually done through a male perspective, and it was interesting to read something that was through Jacob's perspective in particular as a character. I think besides Harry Potter, I think this is one of the books too that was the only ones that I've read that have a male sort of talking and being the voice of the entire book. So yeah, I think really that's all I can say about this book. In a nutshell, it's pretty interesting in how it goes, and what directions it takes, but it seems like for the most part it tries to be engaging, it tries to get you involved in what's going on. It's just one of those books too where I feel like you need to sort of pay attention, and you'll get enjoyment out of it. And if you're interested in these kinds of aspects, if you're interested in circus life, if you're interested in romance, if you like history too, I think this is an interesting one to look into. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about it. It's fairly short, simple, and to the point. But yeah, I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns? I'd be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody,